So, my friend who's a mathematician and a scientist recently told me that ancient India had flying aircraft, and he's not alone in this opinion. I'm sure you've seen videos like this.
Imagine a time thousands of years ago when flying machines soared through the skies, not in science fiction, but in ancient Indian texts. They were called Vimanas.
People who say that ancient India had flying aircraft typically quote three things. They quote from this ancient text from the Rigveda called the Rigveda Bhashya Bhumika, which actually describes aircraft taking off into space and hopping from one island to another in as little as 3 days and 3 nights. They show these detailed schematics of aircrafts in these actual texts that show things like length, width, height of these aircraft, and also describe the mechanisms by which they fly. So today, let's find out, did aircraft actually exist in ancient India? So first, let's come to these ancient religious texts. I'm going to take an example of this beautiful verse of this Yuddha Kanda from the Ramayana. And here Ram is flying over Lanka and showing Sita the wonders of Lanka. And the verse goes, as approved by Rama, the aerial car with swans painted on its side took off into the sky. Now, does this prove that aircraft existed in ancient India? There was a key phrase in the prior verse. Did you spot it? Well, the key phrase is as approved by Rama. Whenever you read the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, you typically see that the characters pushing these aircraft into the skies have to invoke tantras and mantras to make this happen. There's nothing inherent about that aircraft that makes it fly. To state the obvious, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata are poetry. Our poets like Valmiki and Vyasa used similes and metaphors to bring scenes alive in our minds. And this is what poets do, and you can't take them literally. For example, I have a friend who told me, my love is a red, red rose, and I sprayed his girlfriend with pesticide. Things got pretty awkward. Now, the second thing that people say to prove that there are ancient Vimanas or airplanes in India is they quote from this religious text called the Rigveda Bhashya Bhumika. But here's the thing about this text. You cannot find the Rigveda, and this Rigveda Bhashya Bhumika was supposedly written by sage Bharadwaj. So you go and look for this religious text in the ancient Rigveda. You can't find it. In fact, the earliest reference to the Rigveda Bhashya Bhumika is in this book called the Vaimanika Shastra, written by a Professor Shastri and a Professor Sharma. And there are people who got in touch with these authors, and here's what they've said. They've said that Professor Shastri was this deeply mystical person, and he used to go into these trances and recite these shlokas, and Professor Sharma used to take them down. Now, if someone is going into a deep spell state and quoting scientific facts, I would not take them seriously. The third thing that people point to are these very detailed descriptions of drawings of these aircraft, and there are several kinds of drawings of aircraft. For this video, I just want to focus on one called the Sundara Vimana. Now take a look at this Vimana and take a good look at it. Now I'm going to tell you 4 reasons why this aircraft can't fly. If you look at anything that can fly, such as an eagle or an airplane, you'll notice something in common, that the span, the breadth, is typically 3 or so times the height. And this is because a wingspan is needed to generate lift. The height in the Sundara Vimana, the height is actually more than the width. And this means it cannot take off on its own. Because it doesn't have wings, there is another problem. Now, when you look at aerodynamics, you need something called lift to put something from the ground up into the sky. Lift is typically calculated as 1/2 times air density times speed squared times wing area times some kind of speed factor. Now, if the wing is 0 because there are no wings, the lift is 0 and it can't fly into the sky. Now, the third part of the Sundara Vimana is that the exhaust points the wrong way. Newton's third law of motion, that every action produces an equal and opposite reaction. If the air is being released at the top, the aircraft will get pushed towards the ground. Fourth, in the text Shastra written by Professor Shastri and Professor Sharma, they say that the speed is 400 yojanas per ghatika. Now that is 8,000 miles an hour. As an aircraft moves, the air pushes against it, and this is called drag. And for the aircraft to actually take off in the sky, it has to overcome that drag. Now at 8,000 miles an hour, to overcome that drag, the engine would have to produce enough thrust, and no engine that is described in that text comes close to that. Why do people keep saying that aircraft in ancient India could fly? Well, I don't know the answer, but one guess is that they want to prove that ancient India was this wise, tremendous place. But here's the thing, we don't have to resort to aircraft to make our point. You go back to the ancient past when these Indians used to make these ritual sacrifices, and they built these altars in the shape of falcons that could take up to the sky. Now, to calculate the length and the breadth of the tiles that were used to make this altar, they invented the Pythagoras theorem hundreds of years before Pythagoras. Then you have Madhava from Kerala. He wanted to calculate the position of the stars and the planets so he could cast forecasts and calculate the right time to do prayers and stuff like that. And so to do this, he invented calculus 300 years before Newton. And you have Panini in the Astadhyayi. He takes Sanskrit and he makes these structural rules. And many of those rules and concepts are what inspire modern programming today. So, if you want to prove that ancient India was this place of wisdom, turn to real life examples. Don't go to someone talking about ancient aircraft. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like videos on Indian history, mythology, and Buddhism, please consider subscribing for this channel. I hope you have a great week and enjoy the next 7 days that lie ahead. Bye.